Can't believe you put me between the consumer bar and the open bar. I thought we were friends, man. Don't appreciate that whatsoever. Gotcha. We've talked about a lot of law today. My head's already full, so I'm going to skip over some law, but I will throw out a couple of legal issues that older West Virginians deal with and offer you some resources about them. One is timeshares. Hope nobody is offended, but it's kind of a scammy industry from the start, right? There's a whole South Park episode about timeshares. So, if you have a client with a timeshare problem, probably the law has been violated. Please go for it and represent that person. Will the timeshare issues, if you just stop paying these like escalating maintenance fees that are become, you know, the widow's tremendous burden, right? Will they ever come and collect on that? I'm not sure, but for older people, wait and see is not really a comfortable option. It might be different for younger people, but for older people, wait and see keeps them up at night. And older West Virginians are homeowners. So we are the #1 homeownership per capita state in the country, believe it or not. And so, and our older people are obviously most of our homeowners. So, you know, when you're worried about a lien getting slapped on your house, the timeshare stuff is a problem. Fortunately, I've encountered recently that our state auditor's office, the Securities Commission, has a timeshare complaint process. So you can just go straight to the auditor's website if you know a client that's dealing with the timeshare issue. And actually, I called him up because I had this one client. She'd had the timeshare forever. The fees were over $1,000 a year now. She hadn't been in years. Her kids didn't want it. And I said, dude, I don't know how to allege any violations of the law. She bought this thing 25 years ago with her husband. And he said, I just fill out the form and say I can't afford it. I'll try and work that out. And he did. He got it worked out for her. So you don't even have to be too particular. Student loans. I know it's been discussed earlier today, but a lot of older West Virginians are struggling with student loans, believe it or not. Their own loans, but also they co-sign loans for other family members, which, by the way, sometimes is a form of financial exploitation and undue influence that's making that happen, right? But whether it's your own loans or loans that you're obligated under for someone else, we know that they're notoriously difficult to bankrupt, right? But total and permanent disability can get you a total discharge of your student loans. And so older West Virginians have higher likelihood of disability. And there have been some legal changes by the feds in the past, I think, 5 years that make it much easier to accomplish the paperwork for that. If you have a 100% service-connected VA disability, you can get your student loans discharged. It's a 3-page form. It's not hard to do. If you get Social Security disability or SSI based on disability, if you can show through there's a form called the Benefits Planning Query. If you can show through that Social Security is not going to review your disability for more than 5 years. Okay, so they set different times based on the level of disability and other factors. If you can show based on that query that you are not scheduled for a review of your disability by Social Security Administration for over 5 years, that right there will get you a discharge if you complete the paperwork. And then the third way to do it, if you don't have either of those, is a physician certification. And that's where we come in, because we can figure out what are the magic words, right? We can help the physicians figure out, I'm not telling you to lie about the magic words. I'm asking you, if these magic words are true, can you put them on this form? And then we get the discharge. So U.S. Department of Ed has links to some pretty easy materials for that. And then I just want to talk for a few minutes about older Americans and older West Virginians and some issues that are particular to the culture of older West Virginians in dealing with consumer problems, and that also can make them targets of consumer scams, exploitation. Some of this stuff is pretty obvious, but some of it might be a little more opaque. First of all, the seniors have assets. They have the assets. Even in the poorest families in West Virginia, it is often the senior who is the only one in the family who gets a regular check, right? Or maybe the only one in the family who owns an asset. That can make you a target for consumer frauds and scams, but it can also just make you more likely to have consumer issues like, contract warranty issues and all of those kinds of things. Diminishing capacities, and I'm going to encourage you to not be ageist. When you see gray hair, which I have plenty and getting more, when you see gray hair, don't make presumptions, please, about the person's capacities, right? That's inappropriate. But we do have higher likelihood of have diminishing physical and mental and cognitive capacities as we get older. And we are extending the lifespan, right? Medical science is extending the lifespan. You don't get any extra time as a 1-year-old, right? We're extending the end. So we are living longer with more diminishing capacities. And there's a CDC study from 2016 that said 1 in 9 people over the age of 45 has subjective cognitive decline. And that is a self-reported analysis of I'm seeing my own cognitive decline. 45, age 45, 1 in 9 people in this big study. So as you get to be 85, imagine what the numbers are. Also, I think older people, if you've lived long enough, you have probably experienced trauma and grief, and you may be experiencing it now as you have this legal issue. And trauma and grief are both things that can really have a double whammy impact on your cognitive capacities. And I think that there's a lot we're studying at WVU. There's a lot of neurological research going on about that issue right now. But I think it's one of those things that's kind of a hidden disability sometimes, and it can make even a smart, educated older person have real difficulty dealing with the consumer kind of a transaction, right? And also it can make an older person tricky as a witness for herself, right? And there's something I want to point out about that too. If you have a senior client in a consumer transaction, one of the reasons why your consumer might make a bad witness for herself is not what you might think, but the fact that older people who are experiencing cognitive declines, it is not uncommon for them to be able to really pull it together and look great for 15 minutes, right? So you can really appear, to have it all together. But, if you had the same conversation with that person 3 days in a row, you would really get the big picture. So sometimes they can be tricky witnesses in that respect too, in that they can look a lot more confident and have more capacity than what they really do have. And also this idea of you may be able to understand a transaction particulars right this minute, but your ability to understand the big picture and the longer term, that can be something that declines quicker than your capacities to understand the specifics. Also, I think the West Virginia seniors are charitable people. And the FTC has busted some serious scammers, like I was reading about one called Cancer Fund of America. It's a scam. Okay, there's another one called Breast Cancer Society. It's a scam. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of scam in the charity imposter stuff. And so seniors are charitable and generous, and I think that makes them targets for different kinds of scams too. And I think that there's another piece of the puzzle that's really heartbreaking, which is this idea that I think a lot of us, as we get older, and if we're lucky enough to get old, we thought we'd have more by now. We thought we'd have more to give my kids and my grandkids. And there's this pressure of, this is my last chance to roll this into something bigger, right? Can you follow me on that? So I think that that really makes you a target for all kinds of different kinds of the short end of the stick and some consumer stuff, as well as scams and financial exploitation. And the Federal Trade Commission has a database called Consumer Sentinel. I don't know if any of you are already familiar with it, but it's in partnership with law enforcement agencies around the country too. And I read a report with some fascinating data. I won't bore you with most of it, but the one thing that stood out to me that was a bit shocking was the online dating scams. I know everybody in here is probably actually knows a person who has been scammed with the online dating. You fall in love online and then they need money for a ticket to visit you or surgery, right? Those are the first two things that you get. If you are over age 70, according to this report, If you are roped into an online dating scam, the median loss is over $10,000 per consumer. It's a lot of money. So I'm going to wrap it up, even though I haven't gotten the wicked sign yet. I just want to encourage you to, by the way, Norman, you are my hero. Thank you for never giving up. You are definitely a person I have a lot of respect for. We need more Normans. And also one of the things he said really came out to me, this idea that sometimes you got to take weak cases. We need to take weak cases because the bad guys are assuming, right, that they're just going to keep getting away with it because everybody's case is a weak case. So I would really encourage people to sometimes take a loser now and again for an older West Virginia. Thank you.